decent actually. I guess I'll go with this one.
My 2 cent presents Runday Diet. Runday Diet, Avery 31, 2026, by Paul Emerson. What this is Runday Diet. Reflection plus rant rule. The journal is the raw evidence. The planner is the prediction. The diary is where I translate the evidence into meaning and a decision. Today's diary has two jobs. One, reflect on Avery 28, 2026, what happened and what it taught. Two, make a prediction for Avery 31 on 2026 before the run happens. If I don't predict, I'm not doing science. I'm only documenting. Reflection of Avery 28, 2026, the evidence. Runday event, 2 miles. Recorded 2.02 miles in 23:14. Normalized 2.00 mile equivalent to our 23:0. Average pace to 11 and 20 h-mile. Average heart rate, 133 BPM. Splits, mile 1, 10:41, mile 2. That split difference is the story. It tells me I did not run 2 miles. I ran 1 mile fast and 1 mile tired. Reflection of Avery 28, 2026. What it means. Avery 28 was not a bad run. It was a clean example of my current bias. I still start like I'm trying to win a 2-mile race. Then I finish like I'm remembering I'm training for 100K. The heart rate data matters here. 133 BPM average says the effort was controlled overall, which means the slowdown wasn't pure panic. It was pacing. It was decision making at mile 1. This is good news because pacing is fixable. I don't need a new body to fix pacing. I need a new rule that I follow even when my ego wants to sprint. The rant. Why this matters beyond 2 miles. If I can't control the first mile, I can't control the first hour. And if I can't control the first hour, I will never control the first 30 miles. A 100K isn't defeated by lack of motivation. It's defeated by small bad decisions made early. The problem is never mile 62. The problem is mile 1 pretending it's mile 62. I don't need hype. I need compliance. I need a system that survives my mood. That's what Runday is for. Prediction for the next run. Avery 31, 2026. This prediction is written before the run. Because the prediction is the scientific stake in the ground. Baseline logic. My recent 2-mile equivalents have been living in a band. Good, efficient days. Low 22 minutes. Heavy or sloppy pacing days. Low 23 minutes. Avery 28 normalized to 23 tells me I'm still vulnerable to pacing drift. So I do not predict a hero time. I predict a repeatable time under controlled execution. Prediction, 2.0 mile target. Target, prediction range, 2205 to 2255. Split plan, the rule that makes the prediction real. Even split discipline, mile 1, 11:10, mile 2, 11:15. Why not faster?
Give me a second.
Because my
I'll
biggest
answer that.
enemy is not speed. It is starting too fast. This plan forces honesty. The rule for Avery 31, 2026. Rule, do not borrow speed from mile 2. If mile 1 feels too easy, good. That means the plan is working. If mile 2 is strong, that means the training is moving in the right direction for 100K. Close where the proof lives. Diary ends here. Planner is prediction. Journal is proof. Diary is meaning. See you on Avery 31, 2026.
I don't. Addiction. Addiction is a dependency on something outside of this of self, right? So, how I walk to the stream. So, addiction is dependency on something outside of the self. One of the things that we don't really communicate very effectively when it comes to the idea of addiction is that most of the things that the relationship between your mind as a physical brain and your body is one that is more parasitic than symbiotic. So everything that the brain does, it requires the body. All of the chemicals, all of the dopamine and everything else that we talk about that the brain uses to facilitate its ability to regulate the body is is all manufactured by the body. So everything the brain needs to function is manufactured by the body, and everything the body needs to regulate itself is controlled by the brain. So there's this relationship between the brain forcing the body to create the things that it needs to function and survive, and the body basically getting permission from the brain to do the things that the body needs to do for the brain, right? So when you say, why are men addicted to women, you have to realize that men are not, by definition, men are not addicted to women. Men are attracted to women because the goal of males and females is to reproduce. So the purpose, my understanding is that humans are higher level animals, and as higher level animals, we have a social system, right? I think that the interaction of human and human intelligence inherently, in my opinion, is a direct consequence of females, right? Like if you think about it like this, right? You have males and you have females, and we have these very specific roles. Our goals are always to come together and produce children and make more of ourselves, right? But if you look at the role of a male and the role of a female, which one has to socialize more? Females, right? Females are more dependent on their ability to socialize. So human intelligence, as we see it and as we understand it, evolved more from females having to be more social than from males having to be more physically aggressive and physically assertive, right? So from that, right, you get to the point of this idea of your question, which was, why are men addicted to women? The conflict is that the way that males feel toward females is the same way females feel toward males. The difference is that my inner ego, the boy who never got attention from females. The difference between males being attracted to females and females being attracted to males is that inherently it is more dangerous for a female to spend time with a male than it is for a male to spend time with a female, right? Males are physical adult males are physically strong enough to, just with our bare hands, we can physically kill women. Just without any weapons, without any tools or nothing, just from physical blunt force trauma, the human male can kill women. And that instinctive understanding of the level of vulnerability that comes with that dynamic between us men and them women is the underlying conflict that exists. We see this idea like men are more sexually attractive or more outwardly attracted to women than women are of men, but it's not true. Women internalize their feelings a little bit more than men do when it comes to their attraction to us, but the feeling that is shared between us is mutual, if not stronger in women than it is in men. So, thanks for the happy Black History Month. Random question: if a gay person falls after 12 hours, did they sleep 12 hours straight or 12 hours? I would say 12 hours straight. But yeah, I would say 12 hours straight. That's a funny joke. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. I don't think there's an inherent dependency that males have on women. I think there's a higher influence and a desire that pushes males and females to reproduce, right? Like the goal is always for us to produce more offspring and more children. So that fundamental influence of the mind Because the body is like, hey, I've got all of these things that I need to do this stuff with, right? I've got all of these hormones and I got all of these gametes and all of these impulses, and there's this need for me to do this thing. I need you, brain, to think about what needs to happen so that this thing that I desire to do can be done. That's like the body saying, let's go out and reproduce. Like we're eating food, we're drinking water, we're interacting with other people, but we're not engaged in the action that's going to cause us to produce more of ourselves, right? So we need to do that. So we experience that influence from the body in the mind as sex drive and sex and the desire to reproduce, and indirectly love, because love is actually more of the security that comes with being in a group that allows for safety and insurance of self. Good evening. Right? If you think about, like, because I always say that love is allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough and open enough to allow someone to be kind and respectful to you. It's not really this. We like to feel good, but the logic of love is like accepting someone for who they are and acknowledging that they are a decent person and they're good to be around, and that that their presence is brings value to your presence, and inspiring to be that for someone else in a more generalized way, not just this euphoria that comes with the realization that you're being validated by someone outside of yourself. Like we think more about love in that regard, but the latter regard is the one that actually is more consistent with the true nature of love. I don't really see love as an emotion. I see it as a state of a mental state of being. It's like a logic and less of an actual emotional state. So HM. So yeah, so that's pretty much. Hopefully that answered the question. What I wanted to say. Um, I'm trying to rant less and move more into a more focused and more coherent um, story structure, or more focused approach to this video. I wanted to reiterate one more time about my position when it comes to religion. I don't want to come off as somebody that hates Christians. I don't. I'm not a person that subscribes to the idea of hate, but I definitely am strongly more Morgan Mason. I think that's how you pronounce that. Welcome to the stream. Never seen this. I don't even know how to pronounce this. The global connectivity is cool.
Murmansk.
Murmansk. Someone all the way from Murmansk. Well, I think you're a reoccurring um, person to the channel. But yeah, Murmansk. That's cool. But I don't want to come off as someone that is anti Christianity or anti Islam or anti any kind of religion. I'm just pro being about who you are and what you are. And what I see from people there are good people and there are bad people, right? I think we can all agree that there are people that are good and there are people that are bad. What I see within the religious community is an acceptance of bad people because they are that religion. And it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me why you would be like, oh my God, this guy just stole money from me. Somebody stop that person. And then when you catch up to them, they're like, I stole money from you, I'm an atheist. And you're like, we knew it. You're an atheist and you stole money and you're a horrible person because of that. Same scenario, and that person's like, oh, I'm a Christian. It's like, oh, you're a Christian. okay, you're not as bad as an atheist that if was I'm glad you're a Christian stealing money from me opposed to an atheist stealing money from me. I never could understand why the things that people do becomes less of a problem when they say that they are a Christian. Like even on the news, it's just like always this thing like, you know, well see the atheists think they are God is not actually correct. Atheists and atheism doesn't believe in God. When you when religion teaches that anything outside of religion is bad or wrong or terrible to prevent you from thinking critically enough to step outside of religion, you misinterpret what someone is saying. If you have a strong belief in God, then you have a strong belief in God. If I don't believe in God, it is not your responsibility to try to force me to change my understanding of how I process information to align with your acceptance of a deity, right? So, atheists says they are the creator. Oh, I have dealt with atheists. I'm not going to say that the specific experience that you may or may not have had with atheists isn't true. What I will say is that the evidence that God doesn't exist is just as equally true as the evidence that God does exist. So the possibility that God does not exist and the possibility that God does exist are a 50-50 shot. The fear of being punished because God does exist and you pretended like they didn't for your entire life is, I guess, an acceptable justification to be more pro-God than anti-God. But if you think about it for a half a second, any God that would be upset at you because you chose to accept the lack of their evidence of physical existence as the evidence that they don't exist, and then would punish you for choosing to live in a world that doesn't have them present, seems extreme. Seems more extreme than the idea that atheism is bad, right? And what I mean is, we know that we have parents. Like everybody that exists on the planet knows that they came from a mother and a father until technology changes that. If you've never met your father in life, you know somewhere on the planet there existed someone that fathered you, right? Inherently, you know that. You know that somewhere inherently there is a person that is physically responsible for your existence and your being, and you can seek that person out and you can do all the work to find that person, right? When it comes to God as a concept, there is no way for us to directly physically interact with a God. And people that are empirical, people that are physical, people that want to touch something and hold it in their hand and want to directly experience things cannot separate the idea that this thing that you're telling me that exists, that doesn't physically exist, doesn't hold enough value for me to use it as a justification to manage my behavior around the way that you're telling me to. And the biggest issue with a lot of people that fall into religion is that you don't want to see the people in your space as people. You don't want to see you don't want to see the flaws of a person that subscribes to any religion as an example of your God. Does it make sense? Like there are good people and there are bad people. When you go into a church, the church is full of people, and some of those people are good people, and some of those people are bad people. And what atheists tend to understand is that some of the worst people on this planet have done atrocious things in the name of God in every religion, all over it. Like there's not a single religion that exists that is free from crimes against humanity, right? None of them. They're all universally equally bad, and they are all universally equally good. I think when it comes to the idea of philosophy and the principles that you should aspire to as a child and the things that you should try to grow up toward, and when it comes to the ideas and religions that say these are things that you should do to be a better person universally, I think religions are great at that. Where I think religions fail is that they say these are the things you should do in the name of insert your deity here, or else you will go to hell. And if you step outside of this to try to go over here to them, you will go to hell. And what that does is, it's like we have this perfect structure for how we can bring harmony to the world, but we can only be harmonious inside of our little circle, and you have to accept the fact that the circles outside of your circle are bad. And I want to say that for an atheist, they have a problem with that. They have a problem with this idea that Allah is perfect and Jesus is bad. Jesus is perfect and Allah is bad. Yahweh is perfect and Yah and Allah and Jesus is bad. You know, Shiva is perfect and all that. Like this idea, like human knowledge is finite and needs to be structured in this isolationist mentality, I think is why atheists have the position that they have. I lean more toward being pro God than anything else, and I have to say that out loud because I know I come off as this anti-religious person because I am anti-religious. I am 100% anti. This book has all the answers to life. You put all the answers in life in one book and we didn't figure that shit out. I am very anti-religion because if you look at the state of the world and you look at society in general, you can see like individually the principles of good are just that, principles of good. It doesn't matter where the source for good came from. It wouldn't. If a lion came out of the forest and gave you some wisdom, that would be a really weird experience. But if it could benefit you in some way to make your life better and make your quality of life super awesome, you wouldn't question the source. You wouldn't question the source. So it doesn't make sense to me that you would limit yourself to one book. It just doesn't make sense to me. It never has made sense to me. And it's that's just has always been my position with it, you know, like we have free will. I don't fear God's punishment. We have free will. Well, don't sell out your freedoms because of your spiritual belief. I fear more the creator than the creator. And in Russia, there is no unicorns. Only trust Jesus Christ. Most of okay, let's try something different. Instead of me spending the next hour addressing religion, let's try science for a change. Let me spend a little bit of time talking about how I internalize what I imply as science and philosophy. So philosophy is okay, something is true or it's false. Something is yes or it's no. It's called a Boolean logic. Boolean logic is basically the foundation that something is true or it's false. Something is correct or is not correct. Yes or no. Positive or negative, right? The human mind has by default a desire to understand the reality of the world. And the way the human mind has this desire to understand the reality of the world is based on one fundamental desire and drive of the human brain. The human brain has evolved for one very specific condition, and when you're a young person, older people take advantage of you and use this against you, and then by the time you become an older person, you have had so much of this negative influence that it makes it difficult for you to function as an adult. And what the human mind has evolved to do is it has evolved to identify threats so that you can maximize your own survival. This is the reason why we spend so much energy worried about not dying, right? And we've created a society that has completely conquered natural order, completely, absolutely destroyed natural order. There is no condition in a modern human society where you have to have any kind of existential fear about nature and natural order. You don't have to be afraid of you have to be afraid of lions, tigers, bears. You have to be afraid of tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, lightning strikes. We literally do not have to fear anything, right? And on top of that, the greatest threat to humans is what? What do you think the greatest threat to you as a human being is? I'll ask the question and I'll wait about 30 seconds for you guys to. If you want to leave an answer in the chat later, some I can see it. You're more than welcome to if you're watching this later. But what do you think the greatest threat to you as a human being is? The greatest threat to you as a human being is other human beings. So we invented society. We created society. We created rules. We created laws. We created ordinances. We created punishment. We created jails and prisons and cells so that we can govern each other and operate in a way. I fear more the creator than the creator. In Russia, there is no union. So the creation of laws and orders reduces our dependency on our need to be afraid of each other, right? There's no need because I know it sounds weird, but if you think about it, and this is actually why I created Runday. If you think about how much time you spend every day interacting with people that you don't even know their names, you don't know their names, you don't know where they live, you don't know where they came from. If you think about how much time we spend interacting with each other publicly and how very little actual chaos and disorder we have with like here in America, right? ICE is running around in American cities collecting up all these immigrants. And they're like, all these immigrants are bad people. There has not been a single condition where ICE has actually taken a criminal off of the street and is able to take credit for it. ICE isn't like, oh, we found there's no evidence to them like a perfect example with the FBI or with the police or anyone else. The police do investigations, they arrest people, and they can explain, even if it's propaganda, they can explain how bad this person was, what the investigation was, what they uncovered, all the things that this bad person did, right? ICE can't do that. ICE is not coming out saying these are all of the illegal immigrants that we were able to find and detain. Here's all the narcotics that they had. Here's all the fentanyl that we found these illegal immigrants with. Here's all of the illegal things they were doing. Here's all of here's all of the people that were being trafficked that we rescued. They can't say any of that stuff, right? So when you think about when it comes to the human's fear of other humans, there is an almost zero reason for you to be afraid of other people. When you're a kid, yeah, you're gonna get bullied, you're gonna get picked on, you don't have enough information to feel safe when you're moving through the world. That's reasonable and understandable. But at a certain age, it's like I've had enough experience to know that when I go to the bank to pull money out of my account, I'm probably not gonna get robbed. Or if I did get robbed, I got robbed like once or twice out of my entire life. I've been alive for 20 years and I've been robbed twice. So that's an average of once every 10 years. Like we don't want to, like, you're reacting to terrible stuff all the time, every second, every day, right? And when you really think about it, like, that's the main reason why I started this idea of there needs to be more of a universal understanding of the fundamental principles of empirical data and empirical evidence. Like, there's nothing wrong with understanding. My understanding of science actually makes my understanding of God better, right? Like, I have a better understanding of what God should be because I understand science, right? Like, I don't subscribe to the Bible as a book of historical truth because it contradicts scientific evidence. But as a book of philosophy, I'm not going to argue with the Bible as a book of philosophy. When it comes to the principles of philosophy in general, when it comes to Descartes and Kant and Plato and Aristotle, and reading those, them grapple with even Aristotle's political, I think it's called political, where because I asked ChatGPT, like, um, um, there's a term in Aristotle's political that the term is niggardly. And I asked ChatGPT, like, what is the oldest recorded evidence in philosophy of them using the term nigger in religion and philosophy? And ChatGPT is like, they've philosophy has never used the N word in philosophy, and there's just a misunderstanding. And I literally opened the book and went to the page and read it, and it not only did they use the word niggerly, they equate women to it. And I'm like, this word is this and this is that. And it's like, well, that's not actually correct because of these reasons and blah blah blah. And it's just like, you don't have to you don't have to try to justify the past. There's no need. There the problem, like here in America, when it comes to race and racism, because I'm always talking about in institutional racism, there is no need for modern Europeans and modern Caucasians and modern quote unquote whites in America to justify what happened 300 years ago. The conflict is you're disrespecting me because of my hair texture and my skin complexion today. The shit that happened 300 years ago happened 300 years ago. But because of what happened 300 years ago, today I have to deal with those influences, right? But there's no need to justify that. There's If you lived in a world where it was illegal to treat an African American as a human being under threat of going to jail or being murdered, why would I, as an African American that is being oppressed and punished, feel any kind of way about the world that I live in, contrast against that's the only thing that exists? It's the only thing that exists. It's the only way that it exists. And you guys are justifying it and backing it up with God. What argument is there? There is no argument. But in the present, when you want to have a conversation about it and you want to try to minimize what happened because it makes you uncomfortable, well, it's unfortunate that you're not mature enough to deal with the realities of the world. And if you're not mature enough to be able to deal with the realities of the world, maybe you shouldn't be in a position to have to be the one that is in control of shaping the reality of the world, right? People are like confused about why Europeans and Caucasians that have billions of dollars behave in a certain way, right? Like this Aryan Nation move and this neo-Nazi regime of elitists that have hundreds of millions of dollars, and everyone's confused. Like, I don't understand why Elon Musk would do the hell Hitler, and I don't understand why he would do this, or I don't understand that, and I don't get why Trump is this, and I don't get why that is that. For 300 years on this planet, the biggest industry was human trafficking. We don't say it in that context, but for 300 years, the biggest industry on this planet was the legalized trafficking of human beings by Europeans. That was the largest and most profitable industry on this planet for more than 300 years. Those people's descendants are the wealthiest people on the planet. What culture do you think that they pass down to their children and their elitist circle of mentality? If you just think critically about it for a second, what do you think they teach each other about the nature of existence, like the philosophy that they have in their circle that they keep to themselves so they can maintain their control and their order over the masses? It's inherently and significantly different than the philosophy that we have at the bottom as peasants, right? And it might make you uncomfortable and it might be a hard thing to understand or digest, but the reality of the world that we are in is the reality of the world as you see it, right? It doesn't confuse me that I see the atrocities taking place by people that are descendants from that kind of mentality. Like the people that have money on this planet, Kimball's like, the people that have money on this planet are literally the ones that were responsible for 300 years of slave trade. All of the investing and all of the marketing and all of the continued profit margins that we engage in continues to facilitate their it facilitates their generational wealth. It just does. That's the reason why the African nations are doing what? Trading European currency. Why is the European dollar stronger on the African continent than the indigenous African people's currency? Why? Why is their dollar less valuable than European dollars? Because of institutional racism, right? And all of this stuff, in my opinion, is the backed up by the stamp of approval of God in flesh, which is Europeans as Jesus Christ. We can debate about it, but if you just look at the way it works, that's just how it is. Like at the end of the day, you can do both because the thing. So I've always been a scientist. And what's funny about my hairline is I learned about genetics in elementary school, and my father always wore a hat. He always wore a hat. So I seen him a couple times without his hat on and realized that he was bald. And so at a very young age, I realized that I will definitely lose my hair because genetics. My father is bald, so I will probably be bald. But another thing, but another thing about being bald is for some reason in culture, I don't know if it's deliberate or not, in culture, we equate wisdom with bald men. So as a young man growing up, everybody that was bald in any level of like television or comedy or any representation of a man that was balding in society, they were always wise and intelligent, whether it was deliberate or not. So I knew that I was gonna be bald, and I was given information that people that men that are bald are typically wise, and so I was chilling. Like it was never a thing. It never bothered me. Aerodynamic. That's funny. You're not bald. You're just aerodynamic. Well, from the neck up, from the neck down, you got the wind resistance of a parachute. I can honestly say when I do my 2 mile runs, sometimes it feels that way for sure. So, but yeah, but Yeah, one of the coolest people. One of my brother's friends asked me one day, when I was probably like, I was in my early 30s. No, I couldn't have been in my early 30s. I was in my late 20s, and he asked me. He said, He's like, Paul, who's your hero?" And I was like, I don't really have a hero. I'm not really a person that worships other people. And so I thought about it and I reflected on it. And the closest answer that I could get to that question is, I don't know if how many of you actually watch Star Trek, but the closest that I could get to that answer for like just one random person, and you would think it would be Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or Marcus Garvey or some super obscure African American that fought against injustices of the African and slavery. But no, it would actually honestly be John Luc Picard. And I'm not talking about Patrick Stewart, not the actual man, the actor, the character, the archetype, John Luc Picard. And I say that because Patrick Stewart did a very good job of portraying John Luc Picard as an actual character in Star Trek. John Luc Picard embodies, if you ever watch Star Trek or if you know anything about his character, when it comes to the idea of white people and Caucasians, John Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart's portrayal of John Luc Picard was the best portrayal of idealized white people, right? Like when you listen to what Caucasians say that they represent in the context of humanity, and you see what they do, right? Versus who they say that they are in relation to who they are. John Luc Picard embodies the idea of white better than any character ever portrayed on television. And Patrick Stewart's performance of John Luc Picard, every single nuance detail of his performance, every gesture in his performance perfectly embodied John Luc Picard's character throughout the entire show without ever contradicting itself. Like 100%. You have the thoughts, it just slides right off. So they probably do sometimes. So one of my um one of my all time, there's two episodes in Star Trek that actually shapes my perception, that actually shaped me as a person. It's the one with the lights and the one with the one that really put into perspective John Luc Picard's character more than any other one, and really is like the foundation of what Star Trek embodies, was the episode when Wesley Crusher got in trouble on a planet and was sentenced to death. And what was interesting about that episode was what John Luc Picard did and how he responded to it. And it really reflects how culture has changed so much and how we deal with certain quote unquote controversial topics, right? Because this episode, I don't know if you could do a search and find it and watch it, it'll really do you well as a person to actually watch it. Even though I'm going to reveal how it ends, I think if you watched it through by through, even though you're going to know how it's going to end, it would still hit the same way. Wesley Crusher, he goes onto this planet and he's interacting with this young girl on this planet. The planet is a little bit more primitive and a little bit more backwater than the Federation, but they're advanced enough that they want to have a trade embargo with them. They want to like they're backwater enough that they're behind the Federation, but advanced enough that they don't have to violate the Prime Directive, right? So while Wesley Crusher is on this planet, mind you, Wesley is just a kid. While he's on this planet, he does something within that planet's culture that breaks one of their most sacred rules, and he's sentenced to death, right? So the planet, they take him into custody, and Picard's like, he's just a child. You can't just take him to custody like this? And they're like, well, based on our rules and blah blah blah, he will be tried, sentenced, and punished by death. So Picard's like, fine, you can have them where they're super advanced. Like they're not. He's not in any. Wesley's not in any real danger. The Federation is so much more, infinitely more powerful than him. That Wesley Crusher was never truly in any danger. But John Picard wanted to. He didn't want to use the Enterprise's force to, hey, what's going on? He didn't want to use the Enterprise's force to just be like, we don't respect you, we don't care about what you have to say, we're gonna just do whatever we want. He wanted to try to negotiate a resolve that would allow them to come to a mutual understanding between each other without Wesley Crusher having to die, right? So the whole show is about him trying to understand this culture well enough to find some mutual understanding between them that will allow them to come to an agreement where Picard can simply get Wesley Crusher not to die. To the point, and this is the most important part of everything that went down in this show, to the point where he even offered himself up. Thank you. John Luke Picard even offered himself up. He said, hey, he said, Wesley Crusher is just a child. He's a minor. He doesn't really have the agency, the authority. He's not really able to um, be responsible for his own actions in the way human culture is. He is not of legal age to be tried in such a way. If there was an offense or an atrocity that took place and you are affected and humbled by it, I will offer myself up as pendant. You can take my life, but spare his life so that we can continue to negotiate and be on trial. And it's a really nuanced thing that's being said because it's like it's fiction and you don't really internalize it like that. But if you really think about it critically, this captain was willing to give his life to save his ensign's life, to save the life of a crew member, while simultaneously allowing the Federation to negotiate their continued um, relationship with this culture that they don't know anything about, right? Like that's a lot of stuff that happened in a very short amount of time with this character, and the other culture that they're dealing with was like, no, no deal. We have these rules, we have these regulations, we have these policies. We're not gonna change or violate our policies. To which John Luke Picard said, okay, I've done everything within my power to negotiate with you on any level of mutual understanding and mutual respect. You can't kill Wesley Crusher, I won't let you. And they're like, well, you can't, like, well, there's no other way. He said, no, the alternative is we're taking Wesley with us. We're leaving. Like, we're not even, like, there's nothing to discuss. We are superior to you in every which way possible. I don't have to fire a single shot. All I have to do is beam Wesley off the planet and leave. Well, if you do that, then the Federation will no longer be allowed to have any type of interactions with us. That's fine. We're not going to give you one of our children just so that we can have a relationship with a culture that isn't going to bend on their own rules. You've made it clear through your actions that an alliance with us, an alliance with you, isn't really of any value. It's not of any value. So, well, this is going to be the end of our relationship. And Picard's like, I understand that. Two to beam up. And he just left the planet with Wesley. And to me, that is what makes that so profound is when it comes to the idea of Europeans, Caucasians, and white people, is it wasn't this let me go down to the planet with an armed strike force and break into this vault and shoot my way through all of these enemies to save this child energy. It was just, I am aware that I have more power and more strength with you. I'm going to do everything in my power to have a mutual respect and a mutual discourse and try to communicate and negotiate with you effectively. And when all of that fails, I'm only doing all of these things because I know that I have weapon superiority and I have more power and more control than you do. And there's no need for me to use any of that stuff to force you to understand where I'm coming from. We have this stuff so that we can travel through the universe. The reason why the Enterprise is as powerful as it is because of its mission statement to seek out new life and new civilizations. And sometimes you need to have the bigger stick. But even though you have the bigger stick, Jean-Luc Picard was always elegant in, I know I have the bigger stick, but I'm not going to always use the bigger stick because I have various levels of large sticks. And I will always use the stick that is appropriate for the situation at hand. And yeah, that's like, I know I'm ranting, but that has always been this thing when it comes to um, John Luke Picard's character in Star Trek in that context of why I lean more heavily into, and I lost why I was saying all of that. I know it has something to do with me being bald. I think it's just in general, like that just kind of sums up the way that in essence Paul Emerson in my 2 cents. Like that's one of the core structures of my philosophy, my belief system, my everything about the person that I'm trying to communicate through the internet in a way that is not elegant. So, you know, yeah, it's probably time for me to go do my run. I gotta be at work at 4 a.m. and it's already 1 a.m. So I'm gonna end this stream now. I appreciate everyone that tuned in. Leave your comments in the comment section. As always, my name is Paul Emerson, and I've given you my 2 cents.